A young woman named Bai Li tells her story. She used to work as a manager and traveled a lot around the world. Now she lives in Korea with her mother and her young daughter, who knows nothing. Bai Li always wanted to be her friend, but couldn't, and now she wants to try again. After all, the girl won't remember that she died. Bai Li will now become an archaeologist, which she had dreamed of since childhood. This story, like many others, is being listened to and edited by Hyun Soo, the assistant to the senior manager who works at the Wonderland Corporation. He finishes his work, and then Bai Li finds herself at the airport where she meets a young man. She tells him about her family, how she left her daughter with her mother and is now flying to the desert for an excavation. They exchange phone numbers, and the woman heads to boarding. Soon she is at the site. Bai Li enjoys everything around her, the sands, the camels, and the locals who greet her. She immediately calls her mother and shows her daughter a camel. In another apartment, a phone rings from the virtual Earth. An astronaut, Tai-ju, calls from space to wake up his girlfriend, flight attendant Jung-in. He jokes with her, talks about the weather, and gives advice for the upcoming day. Later, the flight attendant arrives at the airport, and when her colleague invites her to the cinema, she calls the astronaut. He cheerfully agrees to let her go to the movie and even offers to book tickets for the couple. However, the shocked colleague runs away. In the evening, they reconnect. He shows her the peculiarities of space, and she enjoys their conversation. She suddenly asks him to sing for her, and he immediately pulls out a guitar and sings about his love for her. After dinner, she goes to the hospital, where her astronaut lies in a coma in a separate ward. In the office of Wonderland, the senior manager catches his assistant doing something strange, reading poetry. It turns out their next client is a young man dreaming of becoming an actor. They are developing this profile for his grandmother, and the next day they take her a tablet where the student talks about his life in London and how he will soon participate in a play. The woman dislikes his European outfit, and when the session ends, she asks how she can send her grandson normal clothes. The assistant manager shows her a menu where she can choose an item she likes, pay for it, and send it to her grandson. Later, they go to lunch, which is interrupted by a call from her parents. The mother scolds her daughter for eating poorly and being alone. Her assistant pretends to be her boyfriend. The elderly couple asks a lot of questions, and the girl agrees to play the couple. The assistant looks at her family photos and realizes that her father is a rather famous poet. The boy tells the man about his mother and how his father left them long ago, and he doesn't know where he is now. The girl's father reads his poetry, and the group parts on a very positive note. The boy leaves, the girl washes the dishes while listening to her parents' reflections on their daughter and her friend, and then disconnects from the broadcast. She then sits at the table for a long time, remembering the conversation. Meanwhile, Bai Li's mother shows her daughter a recording of a kindergarten event where her daughter is dancing to cheerful music. The woman enjoys playing along and then tells the girl a story about the Tree of Life, which, according to legend, is located right where they are digging. She advises the girl to exercise to be strong if she wants to become an archaeologist. But suddenly, behind Bai Li, there are shouts about some discovery. She quickly disconnects, but then she remembers how she was always busy and rarely talked to her daughter. She returns to the dig and calls the girl again to apologize and promise to always stay in touch. At night, she gets a call from the man from the airport, and they talk for a long time about life. The woman admits that everything around her seems unreal for some reason. He confirms everything around them is just a dream. The next morning, the flight attendant receives stunning news. Her boyfriend has suddenly come out of his coma. She rushes to the clinic, where the doctors explain that the boy may be disoriented and have difficulty with daily tasks, but everything should eventually improve. The flight attendant smiles happily, and suddenly the astronaut calls her because her subscription is still active. The girl dismisses the call and goes to Tai-ju. He starts to remember her and soon returns home. The flight attendant shows him their old videos, hoping he will fully recover. At first, everything seems to go well, but one day Tai-ju severely burns his hand, which greatly upsets the girl. Meanwhile, the manager and her assistant visit another client of their service. A middle-aged man orders his new existence in Hawaii. He really wants to see the future conditions in advance, but the manager disappoints him. The client must be physically dead, or at least in a coma. The man then asks to make him younger and sends the couple his old photos. Later, the assistant reviews them and finds a photo of his mother holding a child next to this man. He realizes that this is his father. He tells everything to his boss. Later, the couple goes to lunch and suddenly sees the student's grandmother, who informs them that she has to work part-time to fulfill her grandson's desires. She recently bought him a car, but the boy didn't like it. She contacts her grandson, but he speaks rudely to her and quickly disconnects. The manager and her assistant are very upset by this turn of events and promise to replace the car for free. In the evening, the assistant goes to his father's ward to confess their relationship, but the man is no longer there. He then attends the funeral, where the deceased interacts with relatives via a large screen, cheerfully greeting everyone who came to see him off. He even reminds a friend about his debt. The boy tries to confess who he is, but never finds the courage. Later, he contacts his father to find out how he is doing. The father assures him that everything is great. Then the pair plays tennis, and the boy is surprised by his father's stamina. At Bai Li's house, the mother asks her daughter to disconnect because the girl has long since fallen asleep. The daughter offers to bring her mother a souvenir, but she disconnects the gadget before hearing the end. Then she calls Wonderland because she intends to stop using the service and tell the girl the truth. Bai Li wanders through an eastern city and again meets her new acquaintance. The woman is not at all surprised and tells him about her problems with her mother. Suddenly, he hears his name, steps away for a moment, and finds himself in the Wonderland office. It turns out he is an employee of the firm and is responsible for monitoring the deceased in their new life. He is concerned about Bai Li's condition and is informed that her service will soon end. The man returns to the simulation. The woman is happy and shows how she used to dance. Meanwhile, in the flight attendant's apartment, the phone rings. Her boyfriend's friend is worried about his condition, but the girl advises him not to worry. Everything will soon be fine. She feels unwell and can't find any fever-reducing medicine. She then dials the astronaut's number. He immediately tells her where the tablets are and worries about her health. The girl lies down but is soon awakened by music and voices. It turns out her boyfriend brought some strangers home because she wanted to have fun. He doesn't understand why she is upset, and the girl leaves the house. She wanders the streets, contacts the astronaut again, and asks him to return to her as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Bai Li calls her daughter and tells her a story. The grandmother demands that she put down the phone and sit at the table, but the girl throws a tantrum, and Bai Li suddenly says that she will take her daughter when she grows up. This causes an outburst of emotion from the grandmother, who disconnects the gadget. She tells the girl that they will soon move to her city. Later, she tells Bai Li about this. Bai Li doesn't understand why they need to move since everything is set up here. Kindergarten, friends, and apartment. She promises to come, which infuriates the grandmother. She throws the phone away and Bai Li is completely confused, unable to understand what happened. The flight attendant, meanwhile, is getting ready for her next flight and rushes out of the house, forgetting her phone. At this very moment, the astronaut calls her. Tae-ju picks up the phone, but the flight attendant returns and, seeing this, loses her temper. He is rummaging through her things, being rude, and is not at all like he used to be. She runs out and answers the astronaut's call on the street. He talks about how the Earth is blue and beautiful and wishes her a good day at work. In the evening, the flight attendant returns home and suddenly sees that their house is on fire. Later, she is shown a video where Tae-ju is seen leaving the apartment shortly before the fire starts, but the flight attendant insists he had nothing to do with it. They are released since there is no evidence. She asks him to be more careful, and he insists he is not guilty. The girl informs him that she is flying to Barcelona tomorrow and suddenly starts crying. That evening, the manager calls the student using his grandmother's gadget. He is annoyed because he is very busy with rehearsals. He is outraged that his grandmother didn't buy him another item, but the girl informs him that the old woman has died. The service will be stopped and the recordings of their conversations will be saved for future requests. The next morning, Bai Li's mother and daughter arrive at the airport, but while the woman is distracted for a moment, the girl runs off. The grandmother reports it to the police. Just then, Bai Li calls. She bombards her mother with questions, and the woman, unable to bear it, tells her that she is not the mother of this imaginary woman. Bai Li hangs up, and at that moment, she receives a notification that the service has been suspended. At the same time, Tae-ju arrives at the airport and informs the flight attendant that he will fly with her. Just then, the astronaut calls. Tae-ju becomes jealous of the caller, and she shows him his double. Tae-ju is stunned by this fact, and the girl says she missed him very much. She allows him to fly with her, but he runs out of the cabin. He then sits in the airport lounge for a long time, watching the planes. Meanwhile, Bai Li wakes up to her daughter's voice. She opens her eyes and sees the girl, who is happy to have found her mother. The woman runs after her. They move through different locations, but she can't catch up with the child anywhere. The mother's phone doesn't answer. Bai Li gets into a car and drives away from the archaeologist's camp, despite their pleas. Suddenly, she finds herself in exactly the same scene as when she first arrived in the desert. The same camels and drivers greet her. Bai Li turns around, makes a circle, and again runs into the drivers. The woman turns around again and suddenly sees a sandstorm approaching. She steps on the gas. She drives blindly through the hurricane, and in Wonderland, Bai Li's activation signal goes off. The manager and her assistants don't understand how this can happen, but the woman is getting closer to the operating system, which threatens a system-wide failure. Across all locations, malfunctions begin. Weather deteriorates, lightning strikes. At this moment, a service worker is sent after by Lee. He catches up with her car, pulls the woman out, and lays her on the ground, telling her that everything around her is a dream. She must believe in reality, and it will come. Bai Li suddenly sees a huge burning tree in front of her. The system signals an extreme load, and the assistant manager suggests deleting all of Bai Li's files. But his boss suddenly objects, as recreating the woman exactly as she was won't be possible. She knows this because she did the same with her parents and now regrets it. The girl approaches the monitor, on the other side of which Bai Li appears. They reach out to each other, and suddenly everything collapses. The system begins to shut down. The manager realizes that Bai Li needs something beyond their service. She asks to open the woman's profile, and Bai Li suddenly finds herself at the airport. At this time, Tai Ju receives a call from an unknown number, and when he answers, he hears Bai Li's voice, pleading for help to find her daughter. Just then, the boy sees the girl running out the door of a service area. He manages to save her from an oncoming maintenance vehicle and brings her back to the terminal. The girl says she wanted to fly to her mother. He tells her that her mother called him and asked him to wait for her, but then the grandmother finds them. The girl asks to call her mother, and the grandmother gives her the phone. Bai Li immediately answers and says she is at the airport. The shocked grandmother can't understand how this is possible. They search for the woman, and she suddenly says that she died. However, the girl still asks to call her and read her stories. Her mother agrees to do whatever she wants, thanks her mother for everything she does for her daughter, and promises to be a good mother to her in the next life. At this time, the Wonderland workers see the system come back to life, although they don't understand what happened. Just then, the flight attendant calls, wanting to cancel her subscription because her taiju has returned. Later, they reconcile. The girl recalls the good things that happened between them, hugs the boy, and doesn't let him go. The astronaut in his world tells her that he is coming home. A notification about the suspension of service appears on her phone. At the airport, Bai Li talks with the service employee again. He wishes her a safe journey, and the woman waves goodbye. Sometime later, the assistant manager meets his mother and calls his father. Recognizing the man, the woman apologizes for leaving him without explanation. He forgives her and asks for her number. A world where the living can't let go of the dead, and the dead can't be forgotten by the living. It's hard to say whether this is right or wrong, but the fact that AI is already changing our reality cannot be denied.